Welcome to Sharkie's Gaming Controllers. I'm Sharkie, and in today's video we're taking a look at the Hunter 1.0 Mechanical Keypad. Now this keypad is for PC, and it's basically a keyboard replacement controller. So instead of using your large keyboard, you use this instead. Now this was actually a Kickstarter campaign that was funded back in 2017. The first batch got shipped out from that Kickstarter campaign, but then after a few updates it kind of went silent in 2019. So nowadays, this controller is actually quite rare and very hard to find. But before we jump into its features, let's take a look at this packaging. And the packaging is pretty minimalistic, but it looks quite nice and posh. So it's all black, it just says 1.0 Hunter, little symbols and arrows, your gaming weapon. On the sides, it's just plain. On this side, it does have the website, which is no longer valid because this company just vanished when they stopped updating on Kickstarter. And the back is just plain as well with just an arrow. Now the packaging is quite posh because when you actually open this up, inside you can see the keypad there. Looks really nice inside its box. And on this side you've also got the cable there. So it looks really posh. I really like what they've done with the packaging. It just looks a nice presentation box. So once you pull out everything from the box, this is what you get. You of course get the Hunter 1.0 keypad itself, looking very cool there. And you also get the USB cable. Now this USB cable has micro USB on one side and standard USB on the other, and this is what you use to connect your Hunter to your PC. So now let's take a look at the Hunter keypad itself. Now this thing is quite cool. It's got a very unique and kind of strange shape to it. Just look at that. It looks so different than any other keyboard replacements out there. So there's the front of it there, and there's the side, and you can see how thin this thing is. It's got a very low profile. And the back. Now the first thing you'll notice about this controller, it's actually got a very solid construction. The actual body here is made of metal, so it feels kind of cold to the touch, and it is very solid. There's no way you're going to bend this. It's a very solid construction. Now, of course, you can see the plates here on the back there as well as a textured rubberized grip. Now, this grip is quite nice. You can see the texture there. It holds quite nicely when it's on your desk, so there's no way you're going to accidentally have this slip out of your grip. It is really quite a nice grip to it. Now, going into the buttons here. So, in total, you've got 14 buttons. Up the top here, there are 12, and there's another round one down the bottom. And of course, you've also got the space key there as well, which makes a total of 14 buttons. Now these buttons, especially these top ones and the little one here by the analog stick, are all round kind of circular buttons. You can see F1, F2, F3, F4, Q, A, W, S, E, D, R, F, and that looks like it has a plus sign, but it's actually a tab key as well. And of course your space down here. Now these keys are kind of circular. They are mechanical keys, and they're meant to look like a typewriter. It's sort of that kind of typewriter style key. But the thing is, these keys do not feel like a typewriter or even a mechanical keyboard. They're very stiff and they're quite hard to press. And more than likely, they'll get stuck when you press them in. There we go. Got the R key stuck there. You can see how it just sticks in. You can just press it again and it'll come out again. Let's see if I can get another one to stick. They stick very often. And it's quite frustrating because, like, if you're trying to play with this and something gets stuck, you have to keep pressing it to kind of get it up again. But they don't feel that great. There we go, another key stuck there as well. They don't feel that great either. They do work when you press them, so they are kind of responsive, but just because they're so stiff and hard, you find yourself pressing extra hard to get them to trigger, which is not very comfortable. You know, you want something to effortlessly press down when you want it. So these keys don't feel great at all. I mean, they don't even feel like mechanical keys. You know, they don't have that kind of satisfying click or responsiveness to them that most mechanical keyboards have. It just doesn't have that. And there's another key stuck. So you can see how often it sticks. So it's just, I guess it's poorly designed the way the keys kind of pop back up, that they stick so often. So the same thing with this little key here. Yeah, it just doesn't feel that great. And like I said, they can stick very often. Now, these keycaps, like I said, are circular, meant to look like typewriter keys, but you can change them. Originally on the Kickstarter page, they kind of promised that this would come with the normal square keycaps, but mine didn't come with those, so I'll just be judging it on the round ones. But essentially, you can change these keycaps. You just pop them off like that, and you can see that's the mechanism underneath. So if you got another set of like standard keycaps, then you could replace these with the square ones instead of using these round ones. And they just clip on like that. So there is a bit of customization with it. I'm surprised that it actually didn't come with the square keys, because these keys are very small. You can see when you press them, they just feel very small. Standard keyboard keys are far more comfortable. Just in the size of them, you just got more surface area to hit. Where these ones, you've got a bigger chance of just not hitting the button properly, it not triggering, or just missing the button completely. So definitely, it kind of lets you down a little bit in regards of the keys, which realistically is the major function of this keyboard replacement controller. Now, this also has an analog stick here as well. Now, the analog stick is meant to replicate the arrow keys on your keyboard, and it also clicks down. Now, the analog stick does work, but it's very intermittent. In my kind of testing with this controller, I found that every now and again it just wouldn't work at all. Like, I couldn't get it to trigger in the slightest. So while it does feel alright, I don't think the mechanism inside there is very good at all, because yeah, it's just so intermittent that it's just not even worth using the stick, to be quite honest. And when you press down on the stick, I did find that triggered quite often. I didn't really have much issues with that. And that basically replicates pressing the enter key. So when you press that, it'll be pressing the enter on your normal keyboard. Moving on to the space key down the bottom here. The space key looks the nicest. Like, it's this metal kind of piece. It's mounted on a slight angle. It's got space engraved into it. It looks really nice. And in theory, it's nice to kind of press this down. It's really satisfying because it is a metal key. It feels like a really nice quality, and it's kind of satisfying to do that. The only issue is that it doesn't always trigger. So to trigger this, you have to really sort of press at the end here and make sure it goes all the way down. If you don't press it all the way down, it just won't trigger. Same if you press in the center. If you push all the way down quite solidly, it'll trigger. If you don't, it just won't trigger. So while the space key just looks really cool and kind of looks like a quality space key, realistically, unless you're pressing hard, then it doesn't actually work quite well in the slightest. So it's a bit of a disappointment in that regard. Now in the center here, you've got this kind of rubberized palm rest, that when your hand is on this controller, your palm has got something soft to rest against. It doesn't feel as cold like the rest of the metal body, so it's quite a nice rubberized pad. It does have a bit of grips into it, so after a while you kind of start to feel those grips a bit, like when you're playing with this thing. But other than that, it's still a nice soft grip, and it gives your palm something to rest on. The Hunter keypad is incredibly easy to set up. All you need to do is first, to connect it to your PC, is use the included micro USB cable and plug it into the micro USB port on the side of the Hunter keypad. So you just plug that in, and of course plug the other USB side into your PC. And as you can see, it will light up, as this controller has illumination. Now, you don't need to install any extra software if you don't want to. There was a software designed especially for the Hunter keypad, but it's incredibly hard to find. I didn't manage to find the software itself. I'm sure some of you guys have it out there, but you don't really need it. Windows will detect this as a standard controller, and you can just use the defaults that are already set up, which is basically what the keys say. These are all your lettered keys. You've got F keys here, tab, clicking down is enter, moving the stick around is the arrow keys, and of course space is the space bar. So it'll use all the default keys, so you don't have to worry about it. The software though allows you to reprogram things and turn certain things on or off. And of course, the other feature is this has illumination. So as you can see there, the keys light up, but it's not very good illumination. I'm sure you can see, if I maybe angle this a bit better, some of the keys are not lit up at all. Some of them are only half lit up. Some of them are only very, very tiny lit up. So like W and S here only half lit up. E and D only have a little corner lit up. And some letters aren't lit up all, like A down here. So it's a really poor lighting job. And the whole keys are supposed to light up, but I think it's just where they've placed the LEDs. It's not shining through the key. So it doesn't look very nice at all. And of course, there's some lighting in the back there as well, in those little gaps. A little bit of lighting in this button here as well. But yeah, it's not the greatest lighting. They could have done such a better job with it. Now, another thing that this controller has, it has vibration feedback on the keys. So when you press the keys, it'll actually vibrate. Now, it's an interesting feature, but it's a bit weird because most controllers that have kind of vibration or rumble or some type of feedback usually do it in relation to the game. So if you're driving a car and you crash, you might feel a bit of rumble indicating that you've crashed. You know, if you go over some kind of surface, it might rumble to reflect that. Firing a gun or doing something along those lines. But this one just does it when you press a key. So when you press a key, the controller vibrates. Now you probably won't be able to hear the vibration when I'm just pressing the keys like this. But I'm just going to put this right up against the microphone, so it'll go out of frame for a second, just so you can hear what the vibration sounds like. So as you can hear, there is like a short, sharp like vibration every time you press a button. It's a bit strange, like it's basically giving you feedback on just pressing a button. It's not relation to a game at all. So basically all these buttons will do it. This button does it, this button does it, and clicking down the stick does it. Moving the stick doesn't seem to do it, but just clicking down does. It's strange. It's like they thought, oh, let's add vibration function. It'll be a cool feature. But then they didn't really know why they were adding it. They just thought it might have been a cool feature. I feel like it wasn't really necessary for this controller to have a vibration on every key press. Now, apparently, if you have that software, you can turn this feature on and off, so you just don't have to have it if you don't want it, because it really is not needed. It's an interesting feature to have, but it's just not needed. It just doesn't relate to anything, so it doesn't really give you any better experience when using this with a game. You just kind of have to get used to feeling that vibration every time you press a key. Now, if you hold down a key, it'll only do it once and then stop. It won't keep constantly vibrate, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's a bit strange, feeling that vibration every time you press a key. Yeah, it's a really strange thing. It's a cool feature though. I don't know, it's different. It's really different. I just wish they kind of related it in some way to make it a useful function, because in its current state, it's really not useful and really not needed. So how does the Hunter keypad work? Well, basically this is a keyboard replacement. So essentially you would have this in your left hand like this, so you can access your WSAD or thumbstick here, your space bar, and then your right hand you would have your mouse. Essentially replacing your full-size keyboard with a much smaller device that has all the main functions you need for gaming. Now, the idea of keyboard replacements is they're meant to be more comfortable, they're meant to make it easier to reach all the buttons so you don't have to stretch across the full-size keyboard. But does the Hunter keypad do that? And I'd have to say no, it doesn't. So while it is a keyboard replacement, you can absolutely put your hand here, you can absolutely access all the keys. It's just not that ergonomic. It's really not. I mean, the designers have said it's a very ergonomic controller, but it's not really ergonomic at all. It feels like maybe if you had a bigger hand, you might have an easier time, but just in general, it doesn't feel very comfortable. First off, you've got to decide, okay, where am I going to put my hand? Am I going to put it right in the center of the palm rest here, and then reach over, kind of maybe lift your hands up like this to hit the buttons, and then use your thumb to access the stick and the space bar? Or am I going to have a much lighter grip like this, where you're practically almost falling off the grip, and then having to stretch to hit some of the keys? It's really like, you know, you got to decide yourself. But even if you decide whether this or this, you're still going to be stretching. So even like this, to hit these end keys, you're going to be stretching either side. And to hit the thumbstick, even to press it down, it's a bit of a stretch. It's not very comfortable to do this. You got to apply a bit more pressure. Same with the space bar here. Ideally, you want to hit it right at the end, so you have to stretch to do that. Moving the stick. And these buttons. First off, just look how much distance is between those buttons. The idea of the design for the spaces is that you won't accidentally press the wrong key. But what I find is when you kind of put your hand on it and you're trying to hit the keys, you've kind of got to lift up your fingers quite a bit to hit that next key. With a normal keyboard, you only have to move slightly over to hit the key that you want to. With this one, those gaps, you almost kind of want to have an extra line of keys here. It almost feels like too much of a gap in between. And especially when you go to these end ones, because you end up having to stretch. The other weird thing is that it's just the layout of those keys. I mean, just look at this. This is WASD right here. And then you've got F keys here. Now you've of course got your Q, E, D. You've got F here and R, right? The problem is that WSAD is right here, and then F keys are right here. It just feels like a weird choice because you wouldn't really use the F keys as much as you'd maybe use these ones. And it almost feels like these should be like over by one key because it just feels off. I feel like I should be holding it like this and not like that. It just feels a little bit off because by doing it, you've got to move your thumb more up to hit the stick. It's just a really weird choice. Like they should have maybe changed that layout a little bit. Now, I know if you have the software, you can customize these keys to be whatever you want. So the F keys don't have to be the F keys. They can be something else. And of course, because you can pull the keycaps off, you can sort of rearrange them as well. But still, I feel like it maybe could have been designed a little better than that. I don't know. It's a bit strange. Now, I know you can just reconfigure the keys. But again, like, you know, by default, they should have, you know, maybe something a little bit better. Maybe think about ergonomics a little bit more. Like it almost feels like this part is just wasted on this controller, and like the end here should have had something more, maybe a longer palm rest or something to rest your hand a bit better, and then of course maybe less of a gap. But then again, maybe if there were square keys, that would be a bit better. It would be less of a gap and maybe feel a little bit better. But I think basically if you've got bigger hands, you might get away with something like this. But if you've got smaller hands, you're going to be stretching to use this controller. It's not very comfortable. While you can reach everything and it is playable, I wouldn't recommend it. It's not really a comfortable controller. So in the case of this keyboard replacement, I would say if you had a choice between this and a standard keyboard, stay with your standard keyboard. Any kind of standard gaming keyboard would be better than this controller. It's just not up to scratch. It's just not ergonomic. The keys just don't work well enough. You know, they get stuck and they don't work and certain functions are intermittent. It's just a really poor quality control of a controller, you know. They should have just had a higher quality control and maybe done a bit more testing in the development of this controller. But it just has so many issues that I really can't recommend it. Overall, the Hunter Keypad is a pretty cool looking controller. It's very unique and very different from all other keyboard replacements. The thing is, it doesn't work very well. There's some interesting features there, and it is a very interesting controller overall, but you can see where it went wrong. Maybe the guys that designed this had too many ideas, and they try to kind of put all the ideas into one controller, and then executed it very poorly. This controller definitely needed more testing, more refinement, and far better quality control. The Hunter Keypad is not great, and I would definitely not recommend it. There are so many better keyboard replacements out there that are far more comfortable and have way more features. And even if you can't get a keyboard replacement, using a standard gaming keyboard will be far more enjoyable than using this controller. However, there is one thing to consider. This was released on Kickstarter, so it's not a widely released controller, which makes it pretty rare. So if you're a collector, then this thing is definitely ideal to add to a collection. I was lucky myself to find this on eBay one day. So it's something to consider if you come across it. This thing is very unique, and it would be an ideal thing to add to a collection. It's just a piece of gaming history, just a weird controller that will sort of get lost to time a little, just because it doesn't work very well and it's a bit weird. So yeah guys, that was the Hunter 1.0 Mechanical Keypad. I think it's pretty cool. Like, it is a really unique piece of history, but yeah, it's just a pity that it just doesn't work very well. Anyway guys, if you like this video, then please press that like button as it really helps out a lot. Please subscribe and hit that notification button so you don't miss any of my new videos, as I'll have heaps more gaming controls and accessories up very shortly. If you'd like to support my channel, then click the join button and become a channel member. You'll get monthly perks and the extra support really helps me out a lot. Thanks again for watching guys, I'll see you in the next one.